Hello, and welcome to My Favorite Games, a podcast for game designers to geek out about games they like to play. Today, I'm super excited to host Ryan Simpkins. Ryan is a veteran reality television producer who's created competitions for some of your favorite reality shows, which I'm very keen to get into. He's now taking his love of competitions and trying his hand at board and card games. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
So nice to be here.
So, before we get into your background, of which I am eagerly interested in digging into, the game that you brought to the figurative desert island is called The Great Dalmuti. Tell me about it. What do you love
So,
about it, and what's it about?
well, The Great Down Moody is actually a game by Richard Garfield of design fame from Magic the Gathering. And back in the early 90s, when I was playing Magic a lot with my teenage years and stuff, this other game came out by called The Great Down Moody. And at the card shop, we would play. And we just looked at this game. It was just two decks with this medieval drawing on it. And we're like, what is this? And it's such a simple game that is completely unfair. And so that is what I love about it. It's a simple game where you basically there's 12 12s in the decks, 11 11s, all the way down to 1 1. And you get everybody deal all the cards to everyone, everybody gets their hand. And then people take turns playing. Like if you play five sixes, the person below has to play five of something lower and it goes on and on and on. Or let me do that again. So if you pay 5 11s, the person below you has to do 5 10s and so on until nobody can play and that person gets all the cards. What's great about it is every round, the seats change. And so the person who's in first place becomes the great Don Moody, and the person who's in last place becomes the great peon, has to clean up all the cards, it has to shuffle the cards. And it's inherently the person that the great Don Moody has a advantage, is in the top position. And so it's a game that's so simple that you can sit around and play with your friends, and it never kind of gets old. And it's just fun because we'll get into reality TV, but I come from reality TV where all the competitions have to be fair. You have to like actually plan stuff so that you're not favoring one person. I know that people always think, oh, these things are rigged, but it's really not. It's really we want everybody to have a fair chance at competing in these competitions. But the Great Don Moody kind of changes all that. It's like, the Hunger Games and Uno kind of if they had a baby, this would be the game, you know? And so it's like just a social hierarchy game that I love. And I can always, it's just two decks. It's small. You can take it anywhere. And for Richard Garfield, it's so interesting that he created this complex Magic the Gathering game, but also created this simple social hierarchy game that's just as much fun.
That's fascinating. It's also fascinating that you discovered it. So you discovered it after, you had gotten into Magic. And was the fact that it was a Garfield game, like, was that one of the reasons why you picked it up? Or did you just see it and think that it was interesting and then only after discover who designed it?
There weren't local game stores back in the, 94, 95, 96 when I was playing. So it's just comic book shops is basically where we went to play Magic because there's no social media, there's no meta decks, there's no nothing. You just bought your cards and you went and played. And so like the only trouble I got into as a kid was I would sneak out on like Friday nights to go play Magic. And I was telling my parents would beat me and be like, "We know you stuck out. Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm playing Magic." But but yeah, I was a real rebel back in the day. But yeah, but it's because we all kind of, held Richard Garfield in such high esteem because here was this card game that we all loved and we all loved playing. We're like, oh, let's take a look at this other game. And that kind of got us into just sitting around and playing. It's so weird. I also learned to play bridge when I was like 19 years old because all the people that were playing Magic love games and bridge is just a classic strategy game. So, people who love games will find strategy enjoyment out of everything, that they do.
Like, what about, The Great Dalmuti resonates the most? Is it the fact that it is so frustratingly simple, in a way? Or is it or is the theme, or is the fact that it's just such a wildly different type of game than Magic? Like, what's the biggest, aspect that, resonates the most with you?
I think it's just like it's the type of game that you can play over and over again and not get bored of it, Some games you play, they're beautifully designed, they're intricately the worlds are great. The worlds are great, and they've made this great game, but you play 1 or 2 times or maybe once every year or something like this. The Great Moody is something you can introduce people to right away, and someone people can pick up right away, and people can have a great time right away. I mean, everybody loves being the person that takes a new game over to someone's house, right? Like, that's just like and then when people love it, it's like, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is great," you know? And it's just fun. It's just I mean, I'm big into game theory and understanding how the game mechanics work, and there's something just really fun about screwing over the person next in line to you, or screwing over your friend in a low stakes kind of fun way, you know, in something that isn't going to, put them in the hospital or something. So it's, that's part I really enjoy.
Shifting effortlessly from something like The Great Dalmuti to, your background, with, TV competitions. I guess if we were to stretch the question area, this element of something that's simple, really easy to learn, and highly replayable is, there are a lot of elements there that are really required in competitions for television, at least from a viewer perspective, needing to be able to understand what's going on very quickly. You're not talking about any opportunity to have rule books or anything like that. I'm curious, how did you start getting into that world, and what then eventually brought you here?
So basically, I graduated from USC, University of Southern California Film School in around 2001, which was right at the start of reality TV. And here I was going to this film school with a great pedigree, and me and my roommate at the time watched Big Brother 2, which was on television at the time in the summer. And it was just like we just got so into it because it's just, Big Brother for all, people can make fun of it all they want, but it's a great summer viewing. And it's the most real reality show there is. I mean, people are just living their lives, being watched 24/7. And so literally, the next summer when I had some time off, when I hadn't got a job yet, I actually called the production office, for Big Brother 3, and basically, back in the day, you could find the number for CBS, call them, who's the production manager, and basically, I called and pleaded over the phone to get me a job as a production assistant on Big Brother 3, and I was just persistent, and eventually, they brought me in for, like, 1 day, which was, like, the coolest thing. If you watch the house on television and then to actually walk into it, it's just kinda surreal. And they ended up liking me, and I ended up being the assistant to the host, Julie Chen, when she was on set. So therefore, I met a lot of the people, the higher ups that ran the show, and that led into me getting offered my first job, really, and that was being an assistant segment producer in the competitions department on Big Brother 4. I don't even know if that's a real title. I think they were just kind of placating me because they knew I love the games and stuff. So then I worked on Big Brother 4 and then stayed doing various roles all the way to Big Brother 10, moving my way up to actually run. If you're familiar with Big Brother, there's 3 nights a week, and so I ended up running the Tuesday show when I left on Big Brother 10, which is more of like overseeing a big crew, but also involving the productions and to your and to involving the competitions. And to your point, it's like Big Brother, there's such a fast turnaround, or we do a full show, a full hour television in 36 hours. I mean, it's like a long time. And the competition usually happens the day before the show airs. So not only that, you have to play it, and then you have to edit it overnight so that it makes sense. And because of that fact, we just I learned so much about how to make a good competition on television. And you mentioned earlier that, there's when you're watching it, you have to get it really fast. There's no rules. But off camera, before the competition goes, we agonize over the rules. And we read to the house guests before, they play, and that's a huge thing that we have to do to make sure that we go through all the rules, go through everything like that, so that they know what to do, because we don't have time to be changing stuff, especially on the live ones.
So what makes a great, and maybe what makes a not great, like, on-screen competition?
So, I mean, it's kind of what makes one great is kind of if I mean, it's the same with any sort of design or storytelling. You have to be telling a story, and it has to be a good beginning, middle, and end, right? So there has to be something that is easy to understand, starts out fun, something happens in the middle where there's a race or whatever, and then the end is exciting or has a justifiable outcome. And then the really good ones are the ones that carry the story over after the game. So in a perfect world, you don't want to create a game that just you play once and then everybody forgets about it. You want a game that kind of could have repercussions. So if there's a team picking element to it, so therefore you got the schoolyard pick that can cause drama in the house. There, one of the games we came up with is one where like when you basically white we took a take on White Elephant, for Christmas where you change gifts and stuff, for the veto competition. The veto competition is where somebody who's nominated to leave the house can veto themselves and stay in the game, basically. So it's a really good power. So then you start putting in other prizes like $5,000, a trip to Hawaii, or punishments. And so people start taking different prizes from different people, and that causes fallout in the house. So those are the kind of challenges that are fun to watch because back to my point about the Great Moody, it's kind of fun to watch people screw over the other people. We have no control over what they're going to do. So we're just sometimes as shocked as everyone else when people make strange decisions. But then, so that's a good game. And it's also with game design. It's like if you can create a game that people are thinking about after they play it and want to come back and play again, that's a great, that's a great attribute to have in any sort of game design in real life or in competitions. But it really is having a beginning, middle, and end. It's like, have a story for the game, whatever it is, whether it's a card game, a reality show competition, or a party game, or a big, long game with a big story. So those are the things that are really important to me. There's definitely been some bad ones that we've created that I learned the hard way. One example I can give you that was really fun is, I don't know if you ever played a game called Corridor with a
Yeah, yeah,
Q.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's like little walls.
yeah, little
Yeah,
walls you can move or put a wall,
yeah,
right? So on Big Brother 4 or 5, I can't remember. The company that made that sent us like all their games because they have really nice, they're like 5 games. And so we started playing in the office and we loved Corridor. We were like, this game is so much fun. Everybody wants to play it. Let's make a giant corridor in the backyard where they can play it. So we put the game in the house for them like 2 or 3 days before so they could learn how to play. And then we constructed a big giant board with pieces and blocks and stuff. And they went and played Corridor in the backyard. And we thought it was great. Then we heard from the editing team, nobody understands how to play this game. It was, like, impossible to understand, and what it made me realize and what I took from it is that, like, you have to be able to explain the game on television in a short amount of time, and there has to be a way where you can see who's winning, right? Um, if it's just a game that's all like puzzles don't make great television because the viewer has no idea what the correct answer is, right? If you don't know what the correct answer is, what the correct path is, you're not participating. You're just kind of lost in watching it. I remember we did a challenge for a show called Great American Road Trip, which families were driving around Route 66, and we got to the Nevada desert, and they wanted to do a game. You know that game where you have to move a car to get the white car out? You know? So we did it with real cars, and we built a giant tower out in the desert, and we got really big cars, and I wasn't in the competition department at the time, but I saw that challenge coming up, and I'm like, "Guys, it's beautiful, it looks amazing with these cars, but nobody's gonna understand how it works because nobody can play along with it. It's just looking down, and so all you're doing is just waiting for the host to tell you who the winner is, right? And so those games uh, don't make really good television, but there are ways around that. For instance, like we on a show called Kid Nation, which is one of my favorite shows I've ever worked on. Um, we wanted to do a puzzle where they had to like connect the kids had to connect those water pipes and get the water from the lake um, to the windmill or whatever it was. I forget what it was at the end. But putting a bunch of pipes together isn't really inherently fun. So what we did is we put checkpoints along the way. So like there's 3 checkpoints they have to get through before they get to the final thing. So as the viewer, and then you can color code them so you can make a red checkpoint, a green checkpoint. So the viewers can then see who's ahead and who's behind because without having checkpoints, it would just be a bunch of people putting pipes together and you would no idea who's winning or who's behind. So those are the kind of considerations that you take when you design a game for television. Like what makes a good game to play for you isn't necessarily a good game for television.
yeah. That's fascinating because, like, I think it's interesting. Like, I was talking to someone about party games and designing party games and how that's different than more typical board games, it's harder because the rules need to be a lot quicker to understand. Usually there's an interactive element, yet you still need a way of, like a rubber band effect. You need a way for everyone involved to feel like they could have some fun. So you're
Okay.
asking a lot from a lot of party games. I just
Mhm.
feel like that's just 10x when it comes to designing games that are supposed to be shown on TV. You're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Like the some of the great things about board games or card games is the journey of going in, and they would make very poor spectator sports because of that.
Ye
And so balancing that, I guess, for TV, I imagine that the primary viewpoint that you're looking through is from that of the viewer rather than the participant. Is that fair to say?
That's 100% fair. You have to like I said, it's like, there's so many things that are fun to play, and there's so many things that just are frustrating to watch. It's like, would you wanna watch someone play a game?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You
probably
know,
not.
I mean, Twitch is its own thing, but would you wanna come to a party and then watch someone play the party game and just be sit on the sidelines? It's not as much fun, you wanna participate. Um, so that's why you kinda have to draw that line between like you said, participation and viewership.
And so, you've talked about examples of contestants or reality show, participants getting together in order to do a challenge. And these usually, they range in terms of what they're doing. They have to be entertaining, but it's a regular kind of challenge. Then you also worked on the American Ninja Warrior game show as well. That strikes me as a much different, like a different type of challenge because there's this expectation of and maybe minimum levels or gauged levels of athletic ability that comes into that too. It's closer to you just designing a sport, right? So how you bring that in? That just sounds like an even bigger challenge. It has to be entertaining. It has to make sense. You have to be able to know how it works, even though you wouldn't be able to do it as a person. And it has to be, athletically, taxing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it comes back to this idea of having a trackable goal, right? So, American Ninja Warrior, the course is 6 obstacles, I believe. I don't know if it's still 6, but they're in a row, and the interesting thing about American Ninja Warrior in particular is there's a whole ecosystem that's come up around it with people who have American Ninja Warrior gyms and stuff. So a lot of the same obstacles are in a row, and a lot of the competitors come back. And when we are editing that show, there's much more emphasis on those story packages, the bio packages that happened before than there is on the actual course. Yes, the course is exciting, but we have to set up expectations. So it's like that idea of setting a goal. If it's a new it's if it's a new person that's running the course for the first time, what are we as a viewer we hoping to get from it? Whether it's like this is their dream or this is they're doing it for someone else, there has to be a why they're doing this. And so that way we feel an emotional connection, whether they either complete it or they don't. If it's a person that's coming back and they didn't do well last year or they did do well, we still have to set those goals and expectations. So as a viewer, we're like, okay, well, last year they made it to the salmon ladder. How far are they going to get this year? Are they going to get up the warp wall? Are they going to get faster?
Yeah.
Um, so it's that one is really about the people and the journey, and since it's a one-on-one, uh, it's they're versus
Yeah.
themselves, it's not versus someone else, so to speak. You have to really kind of find that want. What do they want? What do they need from running this course so the viewer is invested? And so, it was interesting about American Ninja Warrior. We actually when I was working on it, they decided to do the first USA versus Japan, um, special, because it was doing so well, and the executive producer and I, a wonderful producer by the name of Holly Wofford, we were working on finishing up the season, which was crazy because we were doing, like, 2 hours on Spike and 1 hour on NBC, and it was crazy. We were turning around the thing so fast, but, they wanna do this thing, and they're like, "Okay, we'll invite the Japanese competitors over, and we'll invite the American, and then they'll get certain points for completing the course. They'll have a scoreboard and yada yada yada." And we're like, "Oh gosh, that's gonna make no sense," because like, how do you track like what person needs to do what? And so we really worked on the idea, and we came up with the format that kind of is still. I don't think they do it anymore, but they did Ninja Warrior USA versus the world and all different types of things, but we sat down and we started thinking, okay, well, how can we make this watchable for the viewers so there's still a sense of, um, competition because if one team gets way ahead, it's like a football game where someone's winning 56-3, turn it off after the,
Yeah.
at a
Yeah, yeah.
certain point. So how do you design a game that still is exciting all the way through? And so we did is we had them challenge one competitor USA, one competitor versus Japan. So there's three stages of American Ninja Warrior, and then there's Mount Midoriyama, which is the final thing. So each stage gets progressively harder. And so what we did is we had Japan versus USA go head to head. They pick three competitors and they race, and the person who gets the fastest time or goes the farthest wins that round and gets 1 point. And the second stage was harder, get 2 points. And the third stage, which was the hardest, gets 3 points. So in theory, which the team could win first and second round and still come back in the third round and tie it up and win it. So that way, when you get to the final exciting leg, there's still a chance, even if the other team was completely dominant, you're still watching because the other team could catch up, which is exactly what happened. Team USA was dominant and won the first two legs, and then uh, Japan almost came back on the third leg, so it would have been really exciting. But that's something, an example of how you can make something rather than just assigning points to someone for doing something, designing it so that way you can guarantee an exciting outcome.
That's interesting. So, like, I think that's a really nice little example of a mechanic that you can use that doesn't necessarily reduce the likelihood of a more dominant participant or player winning, but it gives the whether it's an illusion or I mean the reality, but depending on skill set, at least there's a chance. Sounds super elegant. When you're thinking about like what are the right kind of people who work on this? Like I don't know how one would say, hey, I'd love to try and produce
Well,
or work in reality competitions, but like what kind of a person does it take to be on your team when you devise these and work on these?
it's honestly someone you just need to understand kind of story and how games work. There's a question I always ask when I'm interviewing someone for competitions, and I'll ask you, why is there not a competition reality show that's a scavenger hunt?
Why is there not a competition in a reality show that is a scavenger hunt?
Or just a scavenger hunt reality show? Because scavenger hunts are huge.
Mhm.
I mean, they're all over the country, but there's never been a reality show or competition show that's a scavenger hunt.
Well, I would probably point to some of the things that you were saying in terms of usually you're reading clues and you're needing to rely on information that you already have at hand or that you've learned. And then you have to travel from place to place, but you're the one actively looking for the different places. So, like, it's different to, like, a maze. Like, a maze, you could look up from the top, and you can see where somebody's going off or something. So, it doesn't really work from that viewpoint. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, those are 100%. The main thing I always look for is the thinking as to why, and we've talked about it before, is when you play a scavenger hunt, it's fun, you're with your friends and stuff, but there's no pre-designed course, right?
Yeah.
So, there's but you don't know who's ahead or behind
Yeah,
because
you don't
scavenger
know
hunts
yeah.
usually
Yeah.
work on like, okay, I need to get this and points for this, or just the amount of pictures or whatever you have to do. But how do you show which team's ahead and which team's behind? How do you show the neck and neck race, right? And that's why like a show like The Amazing Race works because there's checkpoints, right? So like when I didn't work on competitions in The Amazing Race, but I worked on the editing part of it. And you work so hard to always remind the viewer who's in front, who's behind in the race. And that is checkpoints. And you look for things that are similar and you always have to put in the passes. So like for instance, if one team is in third place and then another team passes them is down in fourth place, even if you don't have the footage of doing it, you can, show a car passing and then just change their lower third, their chyron to say third place. Like, it's not really cheating, but you need to show how people are in the position that they're in. Because if you last time you saw the person was in second place, and then the next time you see them in sixth place, you're like, what the
What's
hell just
happening? Yeah.
happened?
And
Or how did they get there? So you take a lot of pains to make sure that people understand where they are in the relation to the
yeah.
race.
Yeah,
You're always
gauging
doing
as
checkpoints
you
and
were
stuff.
saying, like, gauging progress and stuff like that. There's this show online called Jet Lag the Game. and it's these different YouTube influencers that they do races around the world.
Mhm.
Like, but
Yeah.
they'll have challenges like you only have a certain amount of budget, and then
Yeah.
in certain places you have to do certain things, very like similar to the Amazing Race type,
Yeah.
vibe. But even then, like you can tell like everything that is around, all the graphics are it's very clear about who's winning, who's close to catching up, who's losing, who's falling behind. And so yeah, you're right. Like a scavenger hunt, you can't really do that.
You can't really do that. You'd have to figure out you'd have to m devise a way to show people are ahead, but then it just becomes a
Yeah,
race, right?
exactly, exactly, exactly. And the
So,
interesting part about a scavenger hunt isn't necessarily that kind of race. Have you seen any Taskmaster? Any of the UK show Taskmaster? No,
no,
okay.
no, I
No,
haven't.
that's okay.
Uh,
That I would be curious. I'd be curious to see your your views on it because it does have like challenges like scavenger hunt stuff, but there's only it takes place in a house with a yard, and there are all these weird things in it, but it's always the same things. And you see the same person you see this different people doing it at different times. So
mm,
one person, you'll see them do something, and then you'll see the other person, they've completely missed where the first person figured out. So
yeah,
they maybe like that's how they're kind of balancing that out for you to, start yelling at the TV like, "Look, it's right there, the egg timer. You missed well, whatever it was." So I'd be curious to see what you think of it.
yeah. I'll definitely check that out. I mean, there's like I said, there's different ways to do the check-in, right? Like, one of the games that I wasn't actually gosh, I don't even know if I was even working on the show. I think I just had this idea and I messaged the competition producer on Big Brother. I'm like, what if we do like a hide and seek veto? And basically each person goes in the house and hides their veto and but the whole point of the show is to destroy the house, right? The whole point is that just that in the end they'll walk back in this house that's totally looks like it's been ransacked. Cause and so the idea that story continues after
Yeah.
the competition, who's the one that cleans up, and is that a resentment point, right? So that game is really fun because you watch the people hide their veto. So in the house where it is, as a viewer, so you can say, "Oh, it's behind the toilet," or
Or they're
"It's
so
up in this
close.
cabinet."
Or
And so
yeah.
when you see someone go into the house and tearing it apart and miss it, you as a viewer could be like, "Oh my god, they're so close," because I know
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it is. I have information that these house guests don't have. And so that's another way where you don't necessarily need a checkpoint along the way. But as a viewer, it's very watchable. You can play along and yell at the screen because you're looking, the answer basically. Um, I've always said, I used to love the mole. Do you remember
Yeah,
the
the
mole?
mole,
The
yeah,
two
yeah,
the
yeah.
mole. And the problem I always had with the mole was that you never revealed the mole until the final episode. And for me, it's like, as a producer, I know the producers are never going to reveal who the mole is. They're going to edit around it, so misdirections and things like that. And then at the end of the season, they're like, "Oh, but there were clues. There was a cereal box. It had the initials of the mole." And you're like, "Well, no one's
I
ever going to."
wouldn't have thought that.
Right? But to me, the more fun version of the mole is the viewer knows who the mole is from the beginning and just gets to watch them mess with people, and people make the wrong choices and the wrong conclusions. So the viewer knows who the mole is, and so they're watching people make the wrong decisions, wrong assumptions, and so adamant about the point of who the mole is that as a viewer, you're just having fun watching them make mistakes. To me, that is a much more fun version of the mole.
Traitors. I mean, the show that's now super popular, both the UK version and the US version, is kind of that. You know who the traitors are, who are there to screw everybody up. And so you can watch that unfold, and you can watch how well or not well their deceptions are.
It's so fun. It's so fun to do that. And the fun thing about I remember when Hide and Seek Veto, which I think is still played on Big Brother, the the head of the competitions at the time, after when they were running it, he texted me and he's like, "We're running Hide and Seek Veto. It's taking 4 hours. I hate you."
But the edited version will be great.
Exactly. Other version will be really
Yeah,
quick and short.
exactly. No problem. So
Um,
what are you upset with me about?
I know. So, yeah, it's kind of funny.
So taking that, so that's your life, or that was your life. How did you then go from that to like, and I'd love to kind of dig into your game that you're working on, Death by Letters. How does what it is that you've learned in kind of that world of games made for TV, how does that translate to developing a card game or a board game?
So basically, I don't know, people are up to date on all the Hollywood gossip, but Hollywood of all in for film, television, everything is just on this tremendous downturn. And reality TV has been hit very, very hard. Um, in the sense that for the last couple of years, before this kind of downturn that hit in 2022, uh, it has really been that there was like a golden age, if you want to call it that, of unscripted television where networks and streamers were just buying a lot of stuff because they want to get viewers. And a combination of a lot of things happened. COVID, people wanting to get out and about, Wall Street wanting them to actually make money. They're just everyone's not buying as much. And there's a lot of people I know in the industry that are leaving the industry, people who I know that have worked consistently, not like editors and stuff, consistently for a long time. Good showrunners who just can't find work just because there's not enough work right now. Um, and so as that realization kind of hit, I kind of realized, okay, well, I can't guarantee that this thing that I've been doing for 20 years will still be here in the next 10 years. I don't know. I need to start like figuring out what my next chapter of my life is going to be. And I've always loved games. Like I said, I played Magic way back in the day. I love playing board games. I love playing card games. I love playing everything. And so I was like, okay, well, what would be a career that I would really enjoy, that I would have fun doing, that is you know, uh, kind of what I've been doing, but kind of in a different way. And so there was this game that we used to play in the car, growing up, where we're on long road trips before phones and stuff. And it's basically a spelling game. As simple as that it's just a game where you add letters to a word and try not to spell a word. Sounds simple. It's fun when you're in the car. And then my stepmom and my friends encouraged me, said, "Hey, why don't you try to turn that into an actual game you can sell?" At that point, the light bulb went off, and I was like, "Oh." Well, my first reaction was like, "No, it's a card game where people, or it's a game for the car where you just say letters." And, uh, and so I was like, I started thinking, I'm like, well, maybe I could turn this into an actual card game or something I could sell. And then I was like, oh, well, what if I could do this for a living? What if I could take what I know that I've done in the past and change that into something that would be really fun, that I would, if I did for the next 10 or 15 years, I would actually really enjoy. And so I started thinking about it and eventually just started putting together the pieces that I knew how to make a game and figuring out how to turn something that's just can be played anywhere in your brain into an actual card party fun game that has to do with spelling. That's a word game basically. And so that's how that started. And then I just decided that I was going to launch it on Kickstarter, go through the learning that whole skill set of launching a game on Kickstarter, because I started reading about it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I could fail." Like, there's so many games and there's so many things you have to learn about it and how you advertise it and market it and produce it and all and fulfill it and all this stuff. So I found the Launch Boom community. I don't know if your listeners know Launch Boom, but it's been a great place where people are going through the same thing I'm going through, and can get all the advice they need. And it's actually really exciting, you know? So that's how I kind of ended up here. And so it's been fun because, like I said, it's always fun to bring a new game to a party. It's even more fun to create the game that people bring to the party, you know? So that's kind of where I get the joy out of it, and it's been really fun on this whole process.
Just quickly on the game itself, it's a game about spelling. It's called Death by Letters. Uh, can you just tell us a little bit about like what is it and who's it for?
It's interesting. It's been kind of fun to watch who kind of reacts to the game and who doesn't. Because they're called Death by Letters. It's a game of strategy, sabotage, and spelling. And the object of the game is to add a letter to a word fragment, but not to spell a word, and force another person to spell a word. So, for instance, you start with like the letters RES, right? And then the next person needs to add a letter. They can't add T because that would spell rest. So they can't add a Q because there's no word that starts RESQ.
P.
You could do P. So RESP, and then it goes to the next person down the line, and they can do, uh, I would probably do I.
Yeah.
But then and then that's forcing the
But
next person,
T would be
respite.
towards respite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that person would then get a ghost card, and you get 3 ghost cards, and you're out of the game. So it's that mechanic of it is really fun, and you can also bluff, like, if you went RES and I went, what's A, there might be a word. And then it goes to the next person. That person, RESA. I don't know. They could challenge me. And if I didn't have a word in my mind, I lose. So there's a bluffing element to it. So that, I mean, that's the basic game. And the way we took it from like a game that you just kind of start in your head is like you flip over, there's a stack of 100 letter cards. A person flips it over and they get two letters. And then that starts the word fragment. And then we've added some fun things like plot twist cards, so like steals and skips and stuff. So if you get kind of trapped in a word, you can reverse it back onto the person.
And there are ghosts involved.
There's ghosts involved. So this goes to storytelling. Like it goes to what kind of fun world can we make. So it's
Yeah.
called Death by Letters, and it's got these haunted ghosts that live in there, and they've all basically if you get three of them, you're out of the game. And so it starts with a head, a body, and a leg. And there's all different kind of characters from astronauts to ballerinas to ghost lawyers to everything. And so when you lose your first round, you get a head, and then you get a body, and then you get a legs, and then you're out of the game, and you get some weird amalgamation of a ghost along the way. But also, those ghosts also give you abilities in the game. So if you get your head, and it might be swap seats with someone, or it might be steal someone's ghost cards, or it might be a veto one of the letters. So to add that kind of almost kind of little strategy, but to kind of mix it up, so there's always something new and fun that's happening. Um, and it's a fun game. And going back to the Great Dalmuti is where you can screw over your friends in a fun way, but they could also screw you right back. Like if you think in your head RESPI, and then you're like, hey, well, that's gonna land on that person, and then they skip and it lands on the other person, or you know, if they swing back around to you somehow. And that's the fun part of the game for me is that people, you don't have to be a great speller to play it. I mean, if you have big words, it's always fun when people challenge and you throw out a big word, or when you misspell something. So uh, I've been playing it with people that love word games and people that don't like word games, and everyone's kind of enjoyed it. So that's been really fun. So yeah, it was just taking that simple game. So the game of the car we played was just add a letter, and then you get a third of a ghost and you're out. You keep track of the ghosts in your head. So how do you make that into a game? And so toyed with the idea of everybody gets a hand of cards, of letters, and that didn't seem on theme with the game. And went through many iterations and finally just came, okay, well, I'll start the first two letters.
Mhm.
The game will start the first two letters, and then you add on to that. So it's always mixing things up.
Very cool. And, what happens if you can't start if you can't, continue a word with the 2 letters?
Well, so I've this is where AI has actually been really helpful because I've been
Oh,
plugged
really?
in. I plugged in every two-letter starting combination.
Oh, and so there's always a word.
There's always at least a five-letter word you can make that doesn't
Oh,
that doesn't have a
interesting.
word inside of it, which would have taken me so long to do.
Yeah,
Right,
to
with
try and figure
AI,
out.
with ChatGPT, I could plug it in, teach it how to play the game, and then it shot back, examples for each of the 100 letter combinations that I have to make sure that there is actually a word that goes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I wonder what, like, KC
Well, there's
or
no,
something
so th
like
but
that.
there's no KC because there's no word that starts KC. There's KI, KA, KO, KN.
Oh, so you start with it with a consonant and a vowel.
Yeah, so no, there's
Ah.
100 letters, yeah, sorry, each card has 2 letters on it, so it's not pick one of
Oh,
each,
right.
so
That makes a lot more
mm,
sense.
yeah, because that would be then
That
you get some weird combinations. Yeah, no, so each card has 2 letters on it, so you flip it over,
okay,
so it'd be
cool.
like LE or RA or
Nice,
KN,
nice.
and so then I know that there's a word that will go at least 5 letters for that. And there's some that I've taken out after playtesting, like JA is, if you start JA and I flip over a card and go JA and I add a Z, and then what do you add?
You JAZ, uh, Z.
You spell words. It's that
Yeah.
there's no way to get out of that situation.
Yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
is no word that goes that way. So some of the cards that we played and had to take out because
Jazzical.
but you get to if I go JA, um, what's a JAC, then you're like,
Yeah.
that also kinda screws you. That's another reason why
Interesting,
JA is not in there.
interesting.
'Cause I don't think there's any way to get out of JAC that isn't a K.
JAC that isn't a K. Well, name,
No, it can't be
like,
proper nouns, yeah.
how about it can't be like, there's a tree called a jacaranda tree.
No,
No,
but is
can't do
there
that.
a
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
but J is out anyway because of the Z thing.
a Jacob's ladder?
So you went O? Ja
Yeah.
ja hmm. I think I would probably have to challenge you because that's 2 words.
I mean, there's a Jacob's ladder thing that
Or
you
is that
can
1
get.
word?
No, 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 no.
Wait,
Anyway,
but see, then I would have to think about it, and I could challenge you and be like, "Okay, well, is there a JACH
such
word?"
it is really interesting though how you take this idea of like, oh yeah, this is a game we played, but played in the car, and then you're like, well, we actually have to get down and turn it into something that people can play. You suddenly have the challenges that you were talking about before. You need to make it in a way that anyone can play, and that the rules can be clear, and that it doesn't mess you up, so that you are, I mean, messing you up in a good way, but like, so that it doesn't prevent you from having fun. And it's weird how, like, you start getting into all of these little nitty gritty things, and you start seeing problems. And you have to make changes that you might not have even realized were needed, at first.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that comes a lot from my background in reality TV because, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
the rules are so important. And one of the shows where I learned the most about the rules was Celebrity Apprentice, because you're dealing on celebrities, you're dealing with a bunch of, alpha type people. I mean, my first day on the job, Joan Rivers was like screaming at me in the back of the car, which I was like, "What is my life?" And then one time I ended up at a gay bar with Clint Black and Dennis Rodman in the middle of the afternoon in Hell's Kitchen. I'm like, okay, so this is it. This is what my life is. But they have a whole task department that comes up with the challenges, based on a
Yeah.
sponsor or based on a business thing. And we would have these long meetings where they would give us the dossier, which is basically the rules, and we would pick it apart. And
Yeah.
for me, when I'm looking at rules, it's always looking at how do you cheat. Like, I immediately go to how would I cheat? How would I game myself around this and say, well, it didn't say this, or I could do this. And so for me, I always work backwards. And when I was writing rules for Death by Letters, it was the same kind of thing, is thinking, okay, well, what am I missing? How could I cheat? How could someone exploit this kind of thing? And so we'd have long meetings about, all the different things that people, can they buy this? Can they do this? What are the requirements? Da, 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 to make sure there was nothing that A, they could cheat on, or B, that we would then have to explain on television, and then backtrack and go back and make all this stuff so people understand what's going on. But then we'd also have times where we did everything right and Trump would just decided that he wanted to fire some 2 people for no reason that we can't explain.
And
So
then you had to
it's
probably
happened.
figure it all out.
Khloe Kardashian got fired because she took a day off to go to a court mandated drug treatment thing for DUI, and she came back and Trump found out about it. Who's Trump's brother died of
Yeah, alcohol.
DUI, or drunk driving accident. So he's very anti-alcohol, which is odd because he has Trump vodka.
And
But when he found out that she was arrested for DUI, he fired her. And we're like, we have no, like, has it on television, how do we even like explain this? And then he fired someone else. The same episodes. We're like, oh, all our careful planning and stuff just went completely out the window. And we're gonna have to figure out how to tell this story that makes sense.
executive management.
It was like, yeah, because I mean, anyways, because on Celebrity Apprentice, a lot of these celebrities and contestants have pre-existing things they have to do besides just a DUI course. They have
Yeah,
engagements and stuff, and so we'd always let
yeah.
them go to a certain extent. But so it was never a problem until this came up, and it was. I just remember it going. We're all like, "What? What just happened?"
Well,
You know,
bull in a china shop there.
exactly. There you go. The bull in
Yeah.
China shop. Yep. So.
When you're thinking about, especially like, taking this challenge on in terms of, you've worked on certain types of competitions. This is a new one. You're trying to learn, how to get this game, or how to get specifically Death by Letters out there and launch it. You decided to go the crowdfunding route. Why that route? Why didn't you, why didn't you look at, pitching a publisher, or launching it, like self-publishing it, but launching it in a different way? Like, what went into your thought process?
So my main thought process behind this so the publisher route, based on everything that I was reading, is really tough. Sounds like it's very tough right now. It sounds like
Yeah.
with all board games and stuff are having kind of like a renaissance or maybe even a
Mhm.
boom. I don't know. Whereas people are just being pitched a million things. I think I've listened to some of your publishers on here talk, and they talk about how they, sometimes will wait 3 or 4 months before getting back to an email because they're just getting so many of them. So it seemed to me that would be a route, especially with no experience creating a game, would be a really hard route to go, and it kind of putting my game in someone else's hands. Um, and then for actual selling it myself, I don't feel I'm a great marketer. I don't feel like I have the skill set to be managing social media all the time and making ads and doing all that stuff. And it seems like there was a lot, excuse me, there'll be a lot of hit and miss and stuff. And so kickstarting or crowdfunding to me seemed like the way where I could have control. I'm learning all the steps along the way of doing this from, marketing, advertising, production, fulfillment, playtesting, all that stuff that I'm learning myself. That even if this game fails or breaks even or whatever, I'm still learning valuable things that I can take to the next one. And if within success, hopefully the second one's more successful, or I can figure out what I did wrong. um, and I guess the barrier to entry is lower for me in that, and the responsibility is mostly on me. Um, and so that's kind of what drew me to crowdfunding, versus going different routes. Because I definitely considered, oh, I'll put up a Shopify store, I'll put this, I'll make ads, and people will buy it. Um, and it seemed like
which
more
can totally
it
work.
can totally work. Yeah, people have that some people have that skill set where they can
Yeah.
sell everything, they put it on, and it'd be amazing, and they'll just market the hell out of it. I know that's not one of my strengths, so I very much like, order and rules and steps and stuff, and so that's why going through this program with Launchboom has been great for me because it's just do this, do this, do this, do this. You have to have a game that people want to buy, which has
Mhm.
been another thing with I've started doing, just the feedback I've gotten from people because it's always, it's nerve wracking when you kind of put your game out there and you're like, well, is it just me that likes this game or is
Yeah.
it, other people? And when people start signing up and want to follow you and engage with you and stuff online, it's just kind of a validation and hear people are excited about it. It's really fun too. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in crowdfunding.
And from your perspective as somebody who's, been in a we could call it an adjacent space just from a competitions perspective, but obviously a very different industry. Like, what have you kind of noticed in terms of getting into this space? I mean, like we talked the other day about like, a certain sense of barriers to entry and whether or not games are easier to get into now than they were before, and what kind of impact that has. Like, what have you noticed as somebody who's been going through this process?
Well, what I've noticed is that, everybody says find your niche and
Mhm.
anything nowadays, it's find your niche, find something unique or
Yeah.
find something that is that people will like. A, because you'll get more loyal fans, and B, because it's easier to market to them, because you can nail down those specific interests and stuff. And so what have I learned? I've learned that, you know, eh, like I said, in the community that I'm on that's teaching me how to do all this, there's so many different types of games that people are making that are getting funded.
Yeah.
There seem to be a lot of pirate games coming out in the future, which I'm like, are pirates having a renaissance? But uh, yeah,
It was Nature Games last year, so
yeah. Yeah, right? So there's just so many different types of games, and no matter what you're interested in, you can find people that have the same interest for you. And also to be a quote unquote success, selling 1,000 games or 10,000 games sounds like a lot, but it's really not in the grand scheme of these games that sell on at Target or Walmart or whatever. I mean, it's still a lot of games, but it's not on the level of those places, and you can still be a success doing that. Um, so yeah, that's been kind of the most interesting thing is like if you can find a way to make it a fun, enjoyable game, there's probably an audience out there who will eat it up. And you might not find out, you might not think it's for you, but I look at some of the other games like I would never play that, but they go on to sell, thousands of things. I'm like, great, there's something for everyone, right? So yeah, that's what I've kind of noticed. Just learning all the different aspects of it on how much games cost to get him here, to just kind of rolling with it. But it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to think that, it was really fun when I was working around TV because it's like the idea that something in your brain can come from your brain when I was like in my mid 20s, from your brain to have people play it, and then have 10 million people watch it was really cool.
Amazing.
Like, it's like just it's that kinda like, "Oh, wow, I did that," you know? And so I kinda get that same sense of kind of pride if I make a game and even if it's not obviously it'll never be 10 million people, but if 1,000 people really like it and play it and enjoy it, like, that just feels, like, cool. I don't know, it just feels like I always said I got into entertainment to try to, like, affect pop culture, and that was always kinda my part of it to be, like, involved in kind of, these things that people talk about, and so to do that maybe on a smaller scale is still very cool, and it's very exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, also the fact that it's a physical thing. I don't know. There's something about that too. You're making a thing, and then the thing can go on a shelf, and someone buys that thing. It sounds very stupid as I say it,
No, but
but
it is, it's like it's the
yeah,
idea, that, you can create something in your brain and make it into manifest into physical object, and
yeah.
then what you believed in your head, other people are playing that you don't even know, is kinda cool. I feel like musicians probably feel that same thing when they write a song and then knowing that people are listening to it when they're not around and getting something out of it is kind of a cool feeling, you know?
And is that your favorite part of this whole process? The idea that something that is in your mind is gets out and that other people can enjoy? Or, like, what's your favorite part of the kind of whole game design process?
Of this game design, I think it's just, like, I enjoy when people have fun, you know?
Yeah.
I always try to, not necessarily a game master or GM, but just kinda the idea that people are having fun doing something that I created, that's kind of really cool, and also, like, it's exciting to know that this could be a career, down the line, um, that it's something that could continue after this one game, and could be something that I could just keep doing or, bring in other people that I really like, to make games and just because I mean, when you're doing a competition show for Big Brother and there's, 40 episodes or whatever, each with a challenge, you probably have to pitch 200, right? And so you're just all the time just constantly thinking of challenges, and then you're pitching them to your bosses and to the network, and then they like or don't, and then you have to change them. So it's not like these, 40 challenges that go on Big Brother are all thought out of ahead of time. It's like, you're coming up with just crazy ideas, and hoping some of them stick, you know? Um, so it's like the idea of making a board game or making a game or whatever, and then be able to do it again, but now I don't have to pitch to anyone. I can just do what I want to do, you know? Is kind of fun because it's like, that's what I've been doing. I've been coming up with games for different things, albeit a different medium with different
Yeah,
constraints and
sure,
stuff.
sure.
But now to be able to do that and maybe make some more games that are fun, is really kind of exciting. Like I could see myself doing that for 20 years and having a blast doing it, you know?
So speaking of that, are you working on any others, or are any others in the pipeline at the moment?
So part of the reason doing this game is because it's a very simple game to make. It's a fun game. I know it works. Um, But learning all this stuff with Kickstarter, there's another game I have down the line called The Fabulous that I do think has mass market appeal, but I don't wanna mess it up. Meaning, I need to learn all these things, you know, I need to learn all these things now. Hopefully, the game will be a success, and hopefully, I'll be able to sell it on my site or sell it to other people. That'd be great. That'd be a source of income. It'd be great. I could design other games. But I really wanna take what I learned from this to really make sure that the next game is really successful because that's a game where every time I play test it, everyone wants to invest in it. They're like, "Do you need
Yeah,
investors?" Kinda
great.
thing. So it's like,
Yeah.
that game I know will be a mass I just when people play it, it's simple, it's fun. So you have to have me I'll come back on and fill you in on it when we,
Yeah,
back.
I'd love to. Yeah.
But yeah, no, so that's part of the reason why I, wanted to go this route because there's just so much to learn. And it's not unlearnable. It's just, you gotta be open to what's coming at you, how you adjust. I mean, television producing is all problem solving. I mean, that's basically what you're doing is you're problem solving things, as they happen. You're dealing with you know, uncontrollable contestants. Things happen in games which you can't predict, so, that's kind of that's what you do and when you produce, and it's the same type of thing that I'm learning this is, taking that kind of producing skill of problem solving and applying it to, like, making a game, figure out the rules, making the changes and things like that.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for taking some time to share your experience, to dig into the whole world TV competitions, and to geek out a bit about the great Dalmoody with me today. If anybody out there would like to find out more about Death by Letters, you can find it on Instagram at Death by Letters, or by going to deathbyletters.games. Death by Letters is coming to Kickstarter this spring, so depending on when you hear this, it actually might be live right now. But all the details can be found in the description below. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day.